The baseball world has just witnessed three of the most explosive moments it has ever seen, and they all happened within 48 hours of each other. Shohei Ohtani, the man who carries the weight of Japanese baseball on his shoulders every single day, stood in front of the entire media and delivered a shocking and deeply personal condemnation of the social media attacks that have been targeting him and those around him. The room was already shaking from Ohtani's words when Yoshinobu Yamamoto, one of the most talented and most quietly intense pitchers in all of baseball, completely lost his composure in front of the cameras in a moment of raw, unfiltered rage that stunned everyone who witnessed it. And just when the baseball world thought it had processed everything it had just seen, Munetaka Murakami walked onto the set of ESPN and delivered an attack on Yamamoto so direct, so personal, and so brutally calculated that it ignited a debate across the entire United States that is still burning hotter with every passing hour. Yamamoto is nothing more than Ohtani's shadow. Those 7 words have split the baseball world completely in half. And we are about to take you through every single moment of how this extraordinary story unfolded. It began with Ohtani. It almost always begins with Ohtani, because in the world of Japanese baseball and increasingly in the broader world of professional baseball as a whole, there is no figure more watched, more analyzed, more celebrated, and more targeted than Shohei Ohtani. Every word he speaks is dissected. Every decision he makes is debated. Every moment of his public life is scrutinized with an intensity that very few athletes in the history of sport have ever had to endure. And for weeks, that scrutiny had crossed a line that Ohtani had been watching being crossed with increasing concern and increasing anger, an anger that he had been containing with the same extraordinary discipline that he applies to every other aspect of his professional life. But discipline has its limits. And on the day Ohtani stood in front of the assembled media and asked for silence before he began speaking, everyone in that room could sense that those limits had finally been reached. He began quietly. He spoke about social media, about the platforms that have transformed the way the world communicates and the way athletes exist in the public consciousness. He acknowledged that social media has given fans a connection to the sport and to the players they love that was impossible in previous generations. He said he understands and genuinely appreciates that connection. And then his voice changed. He said that in recent weeks, the social media conversation surrounding himself and several of his colleagues in Japanese baseball has gone far beyond legitimate criticism or passionate fan debate. He said that what has been happening is not criticism. It is not debate. It is personal attack. Targeted, deliberate, and in many cases deeply vicious personal attack directed not just at players as public figures but at them as human beings. He spoke about the impact these attacks have on players, on their families, and on the people closest to them who never chose public life and never agreed to be targets of public hatred. He said that behind every professional athlete who absorbs social media attacks with a composed public face, there is a private reality of pain, anxiety, and psychological damage that the public rarely sees and almost never fully understands. And then Ohtani said something that made the entire room lean forward simultaneously. He said that he is no longer willing to stay silent about this. He said that the culture of personal attack that has taken hold on social media is a threat, not just to individual players but to the sport itself, to the relationship between athletes and fans, and to the basic standards of human decency that should exist in any community regardless of how passionate or how competitive that community is. He said that he is calling on social media platforms, on media organizations, on fellow players, and on fans themselves to take responsibility for the environment they are creating and to make a choice about what kind of baseball community they want to be part of. The room was completely silent when he finished, and then it exploded with questions. But Ohtani had said everything he came to say. He answered a small number of questions with characteristic composure and then stepped away from the microphone, leaving behind a room full of reporters who all knew they had just witnessed something significant, and a social media world that was already beginning to react to his words with the exact kind of heated division that his statement had been designed to address. Yoshinobu Yamamoto has always been one of the most composed and most professionally disciplined figures in Japanese baseball. The Los Angeles Dodgers ace, who has built one of the most impressive pitching careers of his generation through a combination of extraordinary talent and almost robotic mental focus, is not a man given to public displays of emotion. He is precise. He is controlled. He is the kind of athlete who processes everything internally and presents the world with a face that reveals almost nothing of what is happening beneath the surface. which is exactly why what happened when Yamamoto stood in front of the cameras was so shocking that it left everyone who witnessed it genuinely unable to believe what they were seeing. Yamamoto had been scheduled for a routine media availability following a training session. Reporters gathered expecting to ask standard questions about his preparation, his physical condition, and his assessment of upcoming games. It was supposed to be the kind of brief, uneventful media interaction that professional athletes do dozens of times every season without incident. But the social media firestorm that had erupted following Ohtani's statement had been pulling Yamamoto into its orbit in ways that reporters had been tracking with increasing interest. Yamamoto had been one of the figures targeted by the personal attacks that Ohtani had condemned. And while Yamamoto had said nothing publicly about any of it, sources close to him had been quietly signaling for days that beneath his composed exterior, something was building. It built all the way to breaking point, right there in front of the cameras. A reporter asked Yamamoto directly about the social media attacks, specifically about comments that had been circulating online suggesting that Yamamoto's success in professional baseball was less a product of his own talent and more a product of the organizational resources and public attention that come with being Shohei Ohtani's teammate on the Los Angeles Dodgers. Yamamoto's expression shifted. It was subtle at first, a tightening around the jaw, a stillness in the eyes that was different from his usual controlled stillness. And then something gave way. He did not shout. He did not throw anything. He did not make any physical gesture that security needed to respond to. But what came out of Yamamoto in that moment was rage in its purest and most undiluted form, delivered in a voice that was low and tight and absolutely shaking with the effort of containing something enormous within the boundaries of professional language. He said that he has spent his entire life, from childhood through every level of amateur and professional baseball, working with a dedication and a sacrifice that the people making these comments online could not begin to comprehend. He said that every pitch he has ever thrown, every training session he has ever completed, every personal sacrifice he has ever made has been entirely his own, earned through his own effort, his own pain, and his own refusal to accept anything less than his absolute best from himself. He said that reducing his career and his achievements to a footnote in someone else's story is not just disrespectful to him. It is disrespectful to everyone who has ever worked hard and sacrificed deeply to reach the highest level of their profession. And he said that he will not stand in front of cameras and smile politely while his entire life's work is dismissed by people who have never picked up a baseball in their lives. Then he stopped talking. He looked directly into the nearest camera for a long, silent moment. And then he walked away from the media without another word. The footage spread across the internet within minutes. And the baseball world had barely finished processing Yamamoto's extraordinary moment of public rage when the next explosion arrived, this time from a direction that nobody had been watching. Munetaka Murakami had been quiet since the chaos of the Tokyo press conference. Since the moment he and 3 others had stood up simultaneously and offered their resignations as an act of atonement, Murakami had retreated from public view almost entirely. No interviews, no social media activity, no public appearances, just silence. Which is why the announcement that Murakami would be appearing live on ESPN sent an immediate wave of anticipation through the baseball world. After everything that had happened, the interview, the suspension, the solo journey to America, the rejection by Otani, the Tokyo press conference, what could Murakami possibly have to say now? And why was he choosing ESPN, an American platform with a massive international audience, to say it? The answers came the moment Murakami sat down across from the ESPN anchor and opened his mouth. He did not talk about his own situation. He did not address his suspension. He did not revisit the Tokyo press conference or attempt to explain or justify any of the decisions he had made in recent weeks. Instead, with a directness and a confidence that surprised everyone watching, Murakami turned the conversation immediately and completely toward Yoshinobu Yamamoto. He said that he had watched Yamamoto's camera rage with great interest. He said that he understood why Yamamoto was angry. And then he said the 7 words that detonated like a bomb across the entire baseball world. Yamamoto is nothing more than Otani's shadow. The ESPN anchor visibly reacted. The studio went momentarily quiet. And then Murakami kept going, expanding on his statement with a level of analytical detail and personal conviction that made it clear this was not a spontaneous outburst but a carefully considered position that he had been developing for some time. He argued that Yamamoto's rage, rather than demonstrating his independence and his individual identity as a player, actually proved the opposite point. He said that a player who is truly secure in his own legacy and his own achievements does not lose his composure over social media comments suggesting he exists in another player's shadow. He said that the intensity of Yamamoto's reaction reveals an insecurity that Yamamoto himself may not fully be aware of, an insecurity born from the daily reality of playing alongside the most dominant and most celebrated baseball player on the planet. He said that this is not a criticism of Yamamoto's talent. He acknowledged freely and directly that Yamamoto is an exceptional pitcher, one of the best of his generation. But he argued that exceptional talent and an independent legacy are two different things, and that in the specific context of the Los Angeles Dodgers and the specific context of Japanese baseball's global profile, Yamamoto's identity and his public narrative are, whether he likes it or not, permanently and inextricably linked to Ohtani's. Yamamoto is nothing more than Ohtani's shadow. 7 words. And the debate they sparked was unlike anything ESPN had seen in its baseball coverage in years. Within hours of Murakami's ESPN appearance, the statement had become the dominant conversation across American sports media. Every major sports talk show, every baseball podcast, every online forum, and every social media platform was consumed by the same debate: is Murakami right? Former players lined up on both sides with equal passion and equal conviction. Those who argued in Murakami's favor pointed to the statistical reality that Yamamoto, despite his undeniable talent, has received significantly more organizational support, media attention, and public goodwill as a result of his association with Otani and the Dodgers than he would have generated independently. They argued that playing alongside the greatest player in baseball inevitably shapes how a player is perceived, and that acknowledging this reality is not an insult, it is simply an honest assessment of how baseball narratives are constructed in the modern media landscape. Those who defended Yamamoto argued with equal force that reducing any player's achievements to a reflection of their teammates' greatness is fundamentally unfair and analytically dishonest. They pointed to Yamamoto's career statistics, his dominance in NPB before he ever joined the Dodgers, and his performances in games where Otani's contribution was minimal or absent as evidence that Yamamoto's excellence is entirely his own. They said that Murakami, a man currently serving a 1-year suspension and dealing with the fallout of his own very public series of failures and poor decisions, is in absolutely no position to be delivering verdicts on the careers and identities of other players. The debate raged across television, radio, and social media with an intensity that surprised even the most experienced observers of baseball's media landscape. ESPN devoted multiple segments across multiple days to the question. Former stars who had previously stayed completely silent on the controversies surrounding Japanese baseball were suddenly offering strong and passionate opinions. International media picked up the story and added their own perspectives, turning what had started as a baseball debate into something closer to a global cultural conversation about identity, legacy, achievement, and what it means to stand in someone else's shadow. And at the center of it all, as he almost always is, was Shohei Ohtani, who had said nothing about any of it, who had made his statement about social media attacks and then retreated into his characteristic silence, who was watching everything unfold around his name and his legacy without offering a single public word of response. What the events of the past 48 hours have revealed, more than anything else, is the extraordinary and almost gravitational power that Shohei Ohtani exerts over the world of Japanese and American baseball simultaneously. Every major story that has emerged from the Japanese baseball world in recent weeks has Ohtani at its center, not always by his own choice, and not always in ways that are comfortable or welcome for him personally, but always inevitably, undeniably. Ohtani condemns social media attacks and the entire baseball world listens and debates. Yamamoto rages against the suggestion that he exists in Ohtani's shadow, and the rage itself becomes evidence for the people who believe the shadow is real. Murakami uses Ohtani's name and Ohtani's legacy as the measuring stick against which he attacks Yamamoto, and in doing so confirms once again that in Japanese baseball and increasingly in global baseball, all roads lead back to the same extraordinary man. The question that nobody has been able to answer, that Ohtani's statement, Yamamoto's rage, and Murakami's 7 words have collectively raised without resolving, is this: what does it mean to be a great player in the era of Shohei Ohtani? Can any player who exists in the same space as Ohtani, on the same team, in the same national program, in the same cultural moment, ever be fully seen and fully judged on their own terms? Or does Ohtani's greatness, like all truly overwhelming light, inevitably cast everyone around him into some degree of shadow. Yamamoto believes the answer is yes, that he stands fully in his own light and that anyone who suggests otherwise is wrong and will eventually be proven wrong by the body of work he continues to build with every game he pitches. Murakami believes the answer is no, that the shadow is real, that it is permanent, and that pretending otherwise is a form of self-deception that does nobody any favors. And Otani himself has said nothing, which may be the most powerful statement of all. 3 moments, 3 men, 48 hours that have left the baseball world more divided, more passionate, and more deeply engaged with the human stories behind the statistics and the standings than it has been in years. Otani stood up and spoke about dignity and decency and the human cost of living permanently in the public eye. Yamamoto stood up and showed the world, for one brief and extraordinary moment, the raw emotion that burns beneath the surface of his carefully maintained professional composure. And Murakami sat down on an ESPN set and delivered 7 words that will be debated in baseball circles for years to come. None of them have finished speaking. None of these stories have reached their conclusion. And the debate that Murakami ignited with those 7 words, Yamamoto is nothing more than Otani's shadow, will continue to grow louder and more intense with every game Yamamoto pitches, every record Otani breaks, and every moment that the baseball world is reminded of just how rare and how overwhelming true greatness really is. The story is not over. It is not even close to over. And wherever it goes next, you can be absolutely certain of one thing. The entire world will be watching. Thank you so much for watching. This is one of the biggest and most passionately debated stories in baseball right now, and we want to hear everything you think about it. Do you agree with Murakami? Is Yamamoto nothing more than Otani's shadow? Or do you think Yamamoto stands completely in his own light? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below and let us know exactly where you stand. And please subscribe to our channel right now because the most dramatic and most important stories in Japanese and American baseball are happening every single day, and you do not want to miss a single word of what comes next.